Christmas holidays are coming, so come Friday, hey, I know the kids and the teachers, and I'm sure many parents say, okay, now we can really enjoy the coming of the Christmas season. And it's an opportunity to rest, of course, celebrate Christ's birthday. Also a time to gather with family and friends and bring them home, and hopefully watch some of the classic movies on TV. One of them that I've really enjoyed watching over the years is It's a Wonderful Life. It's a film of 1946 with Jimmy Stewart and a number of other great actors and actresses. Now, I never watched it before because I thought it was too sappy and too sentimental. But when I actually watched it, it's a profound movie. And only because it's a Christmas classic, but also it raises the question for every person, is my life worth living? What if I did not exist? How would the world be better or worse off? Now, in the context of that question comes in the person of George Bailey. Now, George, who's played by Jimmy Stewart, has given himself totally for others throughout his life. When he was a young boy, he saved his brother who had crashed through the ice and saved him. But in the process, he lost hearing in his ear. There was another occasion in which he helped a pharmacist, and the pharmacist inadvertently had put a poison into a medication that he was eventually going to give to his son. And when George stood up to the pharmacist and said, hey, don't give this to anybody, it's poison, the pharmacist slapped him across the face. But realizing that the pharmacist was saved from doing some harm, then he praised George for his goodness. Also, when George was ready to go to university and to travel the world, all of a sudden he had to be the one who looked after the family business, the Business and Loan Corporation in Bedford Falls. And he was very distraught that he wasn't able to fulfill his dream, but he said, okay, this is what I got to do. And when World War II started, he couldn't fight in overseas because of his ear problem. So his younger brother, Harry, whom he saved from the ice, was the one who went abroad and also became a war hero during that time. Now, George was also part of this business with his Uncle Billy. Now, the hated person in Bedford Falls was Mr. Potter, who owned the local bank. And he didn't like George because George always kind of stopped him from doing things he wanted to do. Now, Uncle Billy had gone into Mr. Potter's office to deposit $8,000 into his account to cover some of the accounts in his own business and loan company. And so Uncle Billy had gone and taunted Mr. Potter because he said, look, we've got a hero. Harry Bailey has saved all these people during the fighting in World War II. And it was kind of, okay, the Baileys are doing well. That's not good. However, while Uncle Billy gives the newspaper over to Mr. Potter, he puts $8,000 into the newspaper as well. And Mr. Potter, being a greedy and very conniving individual, realizes, hey, this is my opportunity to really put George down. And so Uncle Billy never realizes where he put the $8,000. And so Mr. Potter says, okay, you know what? This is bank fraud. Where's the $8,000? So George is going to go to jail and you're going to declare bankruptcy, therefore I'm going to get your company. And so Uncle Billy's frantic. And then he tells George, and George is upset. And George is a very, very sensitive and caring individual. When he realizes the $8,000 that people have given to him in trust, he's distraught. Now, one thing that people do when they're distraught is they start drinking. So George goes over to a bar and drinks heavily. Then he goes home and he fights with his family. And so George's problems escalate to the point where finally he leaves the house, he drives and crashes his car. And it's like, oh no. And then finally George comes out of his car and looks over a bridge, and he's tempted to end his life, to just jump over. However, when he looks over, he knows that there's an individual swimming and drowning. So George is not going to jump down, but he's going to go around and save this individual. It happens to be his guardian angel, Clarence. And so he saves Clarence out of the frigid waters, and he confides in Clarence, "I wish I had never been born." And so Clarence gives George an opportunity to see what life would have been like had George never lived. And it's remarkable because George saved his little brother Harry, that he saved his pharmacist from giving poison to his son, and also had this bank that he ran. Now, if George had never lived, Harry would have died, and all these people who Harry had saved in World War II would have died. This pharmacist who almost poisoned his son was put into prison because of killing his son. And the bank that he had was foreclosed and became part of Mr. Potter's empire. And the town Bedford Falls was renamed Potterville, and everything went to pot from what Mr. Potter was doing. And so when George realized how much of a positive influence that he had, what a gift that he was, even though he had this moment of crisis, he said, "You know, it's a wonderful life. I want to come back." And so Clarence says, "Okay, you can have your life back." So he goes home, of course, to be greeted by police officers who want to arrest him for stealing $8,000. However, George is so ecstatic about having his life again that he embraces his children, and at the same time there's a pile of money, over $8,000 there, from people who've heard about George's plight, who prayed for him, and said, "Okay, George, you're a good guy here, this is how much we trust you." Now, as George is overcome by this vast quantity of money, there's also a book there, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. And so George opens up the front cover, and in it it says, "No man is a failure who has friends around him." P.S. Thanks for the wings. Signed, Clarence. Because of Clarence's good deeds, so Clarence got to go to heaven and become an angel. And so Harry comes back from his time in World War II and says, "George, you are the richest man in Bedford Falls." And George concludes the movie by saying, "It's a wonderful life." So "It's a Wonderful Life" is a great reminder that all of us want to go home. And as we celebrate Christmas, that God dwells with us, it's also a reminder, hey, we must give a home to the poor in our world. Now, another group of people who's very poor were the people profiled in today's first reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. So last week we looked at the 40th chapter, which is what scholars call second Isaiah. And so it's the Israelites who have been enslaved in Babylon after 70 years are starting to come home. Today's chapter 61 is a continuation of this remarkable story. That when they realized how poor they were, that because they no longer had a relationship with God and no longer loved their neighbors, God said, "Okay, if you don't have a home with me, see what it's like." And then they realized, boy, oh boy, we became exiles. And once they came to their senses, they almost like having a Clarence the guardian angel moment, that they have a home to go to, that they have people who love them, and they have an impact in society. They come to their senses and eventually come home. But all the riches of God also requires a gift to give to others. So in this profound passage, the Lord has anointed me, and he says 4 things: to bring glad tidings to the oppressed, to heal the brokenhearted, to give liberty to captors, and to proclaim liberty to the prisoners. So to be anointed means to be like a king, to be a Messiah. And they have this task to share the goodness that they have received with others. And so much so are they endowed with riches. The text says that they are clothed with a robe of salvation, covered with a mantle of justice. They wear diadems and jewels, because they have now come back home to the Lord and now are blessed. And in turn that they've been anointed and now must do something with the great gifts that they've been given. To give a home to the outcasts of society in that day, the brokenhearted, the oppressed, the prisoners and captives. So Jesus dwells with us at Christmas, and so in turn we must give a dwelling place to people who are homeless. And so this passage is over 3,000 years old. So how does it apply to us today? And I think we have to remind ourselves that we are also anointed. When we're baptized, we are anointed. When we're confirmed, we are anointed. And I think if we have been anointed, we have been given remarkable gifts, clothed with the robe of salvation, like the Israelites in today's passage, robed with the mantle of justice. Well, the Lord's going to say, okay, what are you going to do with the gifts that I've given you? And I think likewise, we have to take it upon ourselves to give a home to the homeless of society. And I'm sure that we know of many Georges in our scope of influence who feel that are in crisis and therefore feel that it's better not to have a home. In fact, to feel that life is not worthy, that they're better off dead than alive. Because as George was looking over the bridge, he thought, I'm more dead than alive because I've got a $10,000 life insurance policy. If I die, everyone will be taken care of. And say, whoa, 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 George, you're worth more than that. And I think it's also, a reminder for us, with the great generosity people have, we do so because we want to give a home to the homeless. And the homeless are not just the material poor, but I think those who feel excluded from society. And I would say if you look at the foreigners and immigrants, if you look at the physical homeless, those people who have no meaning in their lives, and many people who are in crisis situations would feel it's better off not living than to live. And I think what we have to realize, hey, each one of us is a gift from God, and in turn we're supposed to share the gift with others. And I think it's a task for us to be like the Clarences of society, the guardian angels, who may ourselves be kind of flailing in cold waters, but sometimes an opportunity to invite the people who are on the fringe of society who feel that they have no home, and to say, hey, I'll show you what life is really like if you weren't a part of it. Say, no, we each have a part to play. And I think by doing so, by sharing not only the anointing that we have received in baptism and confirmation, but even the nourishment we receive today, the Word, the Eucharist, and the fact that we have a spiritual home, so we have meaning in our lives, we have a purpose, and therefore we have a responsibility to share these gifts with the many people in the world who have no home, and we must somehow provide a home for them. And so hopefully you get a chance to watch It's a Wonderful Life, because I think it's not overly sentimental or sappy, but I think it's a remarkable movie of the importance of having a home. And people can overcome so much if they know that they are loved and they have a home. And this week, let us give a home to the homeless, and those people who are in crises, people who find no meaning, those who are materially poor. And let's somehow use the gifts that God has given us through our anointing and baptism and confirmation to then give them a home with the Lord this week.